My husband told everyone I was crazy until his mother exposed the one secret he feared the most. I was driving home when my sister's voice cracked through my phone and froze my hands on the wheel. "Why did you tell everyone you're having hallucinations?" she asked, whispering like someone might hear her. I laughed at first, sharp and nervous, because I had never said that. I told her she was confused. She wasn't. She named names. My book club, my church friend, even my neighbor. All of them had heard I was not well. I pulled over, heart banging so hard it hurt. My husband had been smiling that morning, kissing my cheek, telling me to drive safe. Now I understood the tight look in his eyes. He wasn't worried about me. He was preparing them. As I sat there shaking, the truth landed heavy and ugly. He wasn't protecting me. He was erasing me. If this moment made your chest tighten too, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. I turned the car around, already knowing nothing would ever be the same. The next morning at work felt wrong from the first step inside. Conversations stopped when I passed. Smiles slipped too fast. My manager asked if I wanted tea, then asked if I wanted to sit down, then finally asked if I needed some time off. He said it kindly, like he was helping. That hurt more than cruelty would have. I asked why. He looked away and said people were worried about my mental health. I had worked there 12 years without a single complaint. Now I was fragile overnight. At lunch, my friend Denise didn't sit with me. She waved from across the room like I was contagious. I went to the bathroom and stared at my face, searching for cracks. I looked tired, yes. Older, yes. But not broken. When I got home, my husband hugged me and asked how my day was. His voice was soft, careful. I realized then he had already rehearsed this. He had planted doubt everywhere I stood. And everyone believed him. In public, my husband became a saint. He held doors. He finished my sentences with concern. He told people he worried about me too much because he loved me so deeply. They nodded at him with pity. At home, the air changed. His voice dropped low and calm, like a doctor explaining bad news. "You get confused," he said gently. "You forget things." When I argued, he smiled sadly and said, "See, you're doing it again." I began writing notes to myself just to stay steady. He watched me do it and said nothing. That scared me more than anger. At night, he would sigh and tell me how hard it was to love someone who didn't trust her own mind. I started doubting memories I had lived for decades. I was 62 years old, raised 3 kids, ran a household, survived losses. And yet, with a few careful words, he made me feel small and unsure. The man I married was gone. In his place stood someone patient, polished, and dangerous. One by one, people disappeared. My sister stopped calling as often. Friends canceled visits. When I asked why, my husband answered for them. "You overwhelm them," he said kindly. "They don't know how to help." He suggested it was better if I rested more, talked less. Soon, he was the only voice I heard daily. He drove me everywhere, saying traffic stressed me out. He offered to manage my messages so I wouldn't misread them. My world shrank to our living room and his careful tone. When I protested, he reminded me of my age, my emotions, my supposed confusion. I felt like I was fading while still breathing. Some nights I cried quietly so he wouldn't hear and add it to his list of symptoms. I missed laughter. I missed being believed. I missed myself. And still, I stayed because isolation is quiet, and quiet can feel like safety when you're being told you're the problem. Before all this, I had been bright. I remembered that woman clearly. I had met my husband at 45, already strong, already whole. I had opinions. I laughed loudly. He told me he loved my confidence. He said I made rooms warmer just by entering them. For years, he bragged about my sharp mind and steady hands. Then, slowly, admiration turned into correction. Correction turned into concern. Concern turned into control. I replayed our early days like a film, searching for warning signs I had missed. There were none. That was the hardest part. This wasn't sudden madness. It was careful change. He didn't break me all at once. He loosened bolts quietly, one at a time. By the time I noticed the structure shaking, everyone else believed his story. That I had changed. That I was fragile. That I needed him. Sitting alone that night, I promised myself one thing. I would remember who I was. And I would not disappear quietly. I found the pills by accident. That morning, my tea tasted strange, bitter under the honey. When I asked my husband about it, he smiled and said it was nothing, just vitamins to help my joints. I trusted him. An hour later, the room tilted. My hands felt heavy, my thoughts slow, like walking through mud. I lay down, scared but quiet. He sat beside me, rubbing my arm, telling me to rest. I slept for hours and woke with a headache that felt like pressure behind my eyes. That night, while washing cups, I noticed powder stuck to the inside of my favorite mug. My heart dropped. I searched the cabinet and found a bottle I didn't recognize. Prescription. Not mine. When I confronted him, he sighed and said I was imagining things again. He looked tired, almost sad, like I was hurting him. That was when fear settled deep in my bones. This wasn't care. This was control, slipped into my tea while I trusted him. He insisted I see a psychiatrist. Just to be safe, he said, holding my coat like a caring husband. I agreed, because saying no felt dangerous. In the waiting room, I already felt judged. The doctor greeted me with soft eyes and a slow voice. Before I spoke, he asked about my hallucinations, my paranoia, my mood swings. I froze. Those words weren't mine. My husband had called ahead. I tried to explain, but every sentence sounded weak after his story. The doctor nodded like he had already decided. When I said my husband controlled my money and my phone, the doctor asked if stress made me suspicious. I felt small, like a child being corrected. By the end, he suggested medication and rest. More pills. More quiet. In the car, my husband squeezed my hand and said he was proud of me for getting help. I stared out the window and realized something painful. If I didn't act soon, they would lock my truth away forever. At a family dinner, he told everyone I imagined things. He laughed lightly, like it was a harmless joke. She thinks I'm having affairs, he said, shaking his head. Poor thing. The table went quiet. My sister avoided my eyes. My niece looked confused. I felt heat rush to my face and stood up too fast. In the bathroom, I cried silently, hands over my mouth. He followed me in and closed the door gently. See, he whispered. They all think you're unstable now. His voice was calm, satisfied. That was the moment something broke open inside me. I wasn't weak. I was being hunted. When I returned to the table, no one spoke to me directly. They spoke around me. About me. Like I wasn't there. I smiled because that's what survival looked like. But inside, I made a decision. I would stop trying to prove my sanity to liars. I would start proving his cruelty instead. That night, I hid my phone under the bed. My hands shook as I pressed record. When he came in, he didn't know. He thought I was alone, tired, easy to bend. He started slow, telling me how difficult I was, how broken, how lucky I was to have him. Then the words turned sharp. He mocked my age, my fear, my tears. He said no one would believe me. He said doctors already agreed with him. For hours, he twisted memories and blamed me for his actions. I lay still, listening, recording every word. His voice was cold, mean, nothing like the man he showed the world. When he finally slept, I crept to the bathroom and cried into a towel so he wouldn't hear. I replayed the recording once, just enough to know it was real. That was the night I stopped feeling crazy. That was the night I started feeling powerful. I became careful, quiet, observant. I saved everything. Recordings, messages, call logs, photos of pills, notes with dates and times. I created folders and hid them where he'd never look. He thought he was building a case against me. He had no idea I was building one against him. Each time he smiled at friends and said he worried about my health, I nodded and stayed silent. Silence became my shield. I met a therapist on my own, a woman who listened without judging. She believed me. That alone felt like oxygen after drowning. She told me what I was experiencing had a name. Emotional abuse. Coercive control. I wrote those words down and read them every night. I wasn't imagining anything. I wasn't alone anymore. I was gathering truth, piece by piece. And I knew one thing for certain. When the moment came, I wouldn't beg to be believed. I would prove it. The therapist was the first person who truly saw me. She didn't rush. She didn't soften my words or twist them. She listened, then wrote carefully while I spoke. At the end of the session, she looked up and said something I had been starving to hear. You are not unstable. You are being controlled. She explained gaslighting in clear, simple words. How someone slowly rewrites reality until you doubt yourself. She asked if she could document what I described. I nodded, tears sliding down my face. When she handed me her written note weeks later, my hands trembled. Patient shows signs of emotional abuse and coercive control. It was proof. Not loud proof. Not public proof. But real. I tucked the note into my evidence folder and felt stronger instantly. I wasn't fighting feelings anymore. I was holding facts. And facts don't disappear when someone calls you crazy. For the first time in months, I slept deeply, knowing someone else knew the truth. The turning point came quietly. His mother arrived unannounced one afternoon, suitcase in hand. He stiffened the moment he saw her. He tried to smile, tried to suggest a hotel. She refused. I want to see how you're living, she said calmly. She hugged me longer than usual, her eyes searching my face. That night at dinner, my husband talked too much. He joked about my episodes. She didn't laugh. She watched. Later, she sat beside me on the couch and asked gently how I was doing. Before I could answer, he cut in, explaining for me. She raised her hand and stopped him. Asked her, she said. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. She stayed 3 days. 3 days of watching, of listening, of noticing the way he corrected me, spoke over me, guided conversations. I saw it then. She wasn't visiting. She was observing. If this feels like the calm before a storm, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. On the third night, he drank too much. His voice grew loud, sharp, careless. He called me broken, said I ruined his life, said I should be grateful he stayed. His mother sat at the table, silent, her face still. I shrank into myself out of habit, but then I looked at her. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were cold. When he called me pathetic, she stood. Enough, she said. He laughed, waved her off. That was his mistake. She told him to stop speaking to his wife like that. He snapped back, blaming me, blaming stress, blaming everyone but himself. The room felt thick, heavy with years of unspoken truth. I said nothing. I didn't need to. His mother had heard enough. When he stormed out, she turned to me and placed her hand over mine. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't cry. I felt something stronger. Scene. The next morning, she asked me to tell her everything. We sat at the kitchen table while he slept upstairs. My voice shook at first, but I told her. About the pills. The doctor. The lies. Then I played a recording. She closed her eyes as his voice filled the room, cruel and confident. When it ended, she stayed silent for a long time. Then she said softly, his father spoke the same way. My breath caught. She told me how she had lived years doubting herself, shrinking, staying quiet. How she swore her son would never become that man. Tears slid down her face, slow and heavy. I failed, she said. I reached for her hand. No, I told her. You're here now. In that moment, something shifted. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an ally who knew exactly how dangerous this was. 2 women, different ages, same truth. And we weren't staying silent again. She offered to help without hesitation. Quietly, carefully. She knew how men like him moved, how they planned ahead. Together, we reviewed bank statements, emails, old paperwork. She noticed transfers I hadn't seen, Money sliding into an account with only his name. Preparing. Planning. We documented everything. Dates. Amounts. Patterns. Her calm steadiness kept me focused when fear tried to creep back in. She told me not to confront him. Not yet. Let him think he's winning, she said. At night, we whispered plans like conspirators, our bond growing stronger with every truth uncovered. For years, she had been afraid to speak. For years, I had been taught not to. Now, we were done being quiet. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt clear. The kind of clarity that comes before action. He thought he had erased me. Instead, he had activated us. And the storm he feared most was just beginning. We became careful partners. His mother moved quietly through the house, watching patterns I had learned to ignore. She noticed how he checked my phone when he thought I wasn't looking, how he listened at doors, how he asked questions meant to trap, not understand. She taught me how to answer without feeding him. Short, calm, empty. We began copying files late at night. She showed me where he kept old tax records and insurance papers. Together, we built a second folder, hidden, growing heavier each day. She reminded me to eat, to sleep, to breathe. You need strength, she said, not fear. Sometimes we shared tea in silence, two women bound by the same kind of survival. I had never planned revenge. I only wanted peace. But peace, I learned, required exposure. And exposure required patience. He still smiled at breakfast, still kissed my forehead, still told people I was fragile. And I let him, because every lie he told now was another thread we could pull later. The money trail was worse than I expected. With his mother's help, I followed transfers back 6 months. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Always timed after doctor visits or family events where he painted me as unstable. He was preparing to leave, and he wanted proof I couldn't manage life alone. His mother found statements for a private account I had never known about. This is his exit plan, she said quietly. I felt sick, but not surprised. Everything had been planned. My confusion, my isolation, my silence. All of it made space for his story. We photographed every page and saved backups in 3 places. His mother contacted a lawyer friend, careful not to use names yet. When the lawyer heard the details, she didn't hesitate. If he succeeds, she said, you lose everything. Hearing that out loud made my hands shake. But fear didn't win. Urgency did. We had to move first. And we were ready. The lawyer met us in a small office that smelled like paper and coffee. She spoke clearly and slowly, like she knew how fragile trust could be. She explained the danger in simple terms. If my husband convinced a court I was mentally unfit, he could control the assets, the house, even my care. This is not about divorce, she said. This is about survival. His mother reached for my hand. I didn't cry. I listened. The lawyer advised quiet action. No confrontations. No warnings. She helped us outline steps, timelines, protections. She looked at the recordings and notes and nodded. This is strong, she said. But timing matters. I left the office with a folder that felt heavier than paper. It held my future. In the car, his mother said something I'll never forget. I stayed quiet for 40 years. You won't. I believed her. And I believed myself. He threw a party the following weekend. Said it was about mental health awareness. I watched him smile as he joked about living with a confused wife. People laughed politely. Some looked at me with pity. His mother stood near the wall, arms crossed, watching every face. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I didn't react. I smiled. I poured drinks. I let him perform. Each joke dug his hole deeper. When someone asked how I managed, he said, patience and prayer. I almost laughed. His mother's eyes filled with tears, but her back stayed straight. Later, she whispered, they're seeing him now. I wasn't sure they were, but I knew something else. He believed he was untouchable. That belief made him sloppy, cruel, loud. And that was exactly what we needed. He toasted to strength and laughter filled the room. I raised my glass too, already tasting the silence that would follow. That night, after the guests left, he leaned close and asked if I was embarrassed. I said no. That seemed to unsettle him. He told me I was finally learning my place. I nodded. He smiled, satisfied. Inside, I was calm, cold, ready. His mother packed her bag the next morning but hugged me tightly. "It's time," she whispered. I watched him wave as she left, never guessing what she carried with her. As the door closed, the house felt different. Quieter. Not lonely. Focused. I opened my hidden folder and reviewed everything once more. The recordings. The notes. The transfers. This was the calm before impact. He thought he had won. He thought I was broken. He had no idea that everything he built to destroy me was about to turn against him. If you want to see how silence becomes power, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. The game was about to change. We filed quietly. No warnings. No drama. With the lawyer's guidance, I signed papers for legal protection, citing emotional abuse and financial control. His mother signed as a witness. The words felt strange on the page, like they belonged to someone else's life. But they were mine. The lawyer explained everything again, slow and clear. This would stop him from moving money. It would protect the house. It would force the truth into daylight. I walked out of the office lighter, even though the road ahead was hard. At home, I acted the same. I cooked dinner. I listened. I nodded. He talked about work and stress and how lucky he was to have me. I watched him closely, noticing how relaxed he seemed. He had no idea the ground under him was cracking. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. Not because I felt safe, but because I was finally moving forward instead of shrinking back. The evidence folder left our lawyer's office the next morning. It landed on his lawyer's desk before noon. By evening, my phone rang nonstop. Missed calls. Angry messages. Then his voice, shaking with rage. "You set me up," he yelled when I answered. I held the phone away from my ear and waited. When he paused, I spoke calmly. "No," I said. "You revealed yourself." He slammed doors. He accused me of betrayal. He threatened court, friends, public shame. I recorded everything. He showed up at the house late, pounding on the door, shouting that I was ruining his life. I didn't open it. The restraining order was already active. He didn't know that yet. When the police arrived, his anger turned to panic. I watched from the window as they spoke to him. For the first time, his charm didn't work. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. His mother submitted her affidavit the next day. It was calm, clear, honest. She described what she had seen, heard, and lived through herself years ago. She wrote about his drinking, his words, his control. She wrote about the night he screamed at me in front of her. The lawyer said it was powerful. "This changes everything," she said. I felt a deep ache for the woman his mother had once been, silent and scared. Now, she stood tall. When he learned what she had done, he called her crying. She didn't answer. Later, she told me she loved him, but she loved truth more. His greatest secret was out. He wasn't stressed. He wasn't misunderstood. He was abusive. The man who told everyone I was crazy was finally being seen clearly. And he was terrified. Watching that shift felt strange. Not joy. Not revenge yet. Just balance beginning to return. The collapse was fast. Friends stopped calling him. Work asked questions. Quiet ones at first. Then serious ones. People who once laughed at his jokes now avoided eye contact. He texted me long messages, swinging between apology and blame. I didn't respond. His isolation mirrored the one he had forced on me. Neighbors whispered. Invitations vanished. The story moved without me pushing it. Truth didn't need help once it was free. His mother stayed close, checking on me daily. She reminded me to eat, to rest. I started taking walks again, feeling sunlight without fear. Every step felt like reclaiming ground. He tried posting online, defending himself. The comments turned against him. Screenshots spread. His words followed him. I watched quietly, learning something important. I didn't need to destroy him. He had already done that himself. All I had to do was stand still and let the truth pass through. The recording leaked on a Tuesday night. I didn't post it. I didn't share it. Someone else did. His voice filled phones across town, mocking my therapy, laughing about drugging my tea. By morning, it was everywhere. People I didn't know messaged me with support. Others apologized for not believing me sooner. The shame he had poured on me for months finally landed where it belonged. He went silent, deleted accounts, locked doors, hid. I sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a warm cup, breathing slowly. This was the moment everything turned. Not loud revenge, not screaming justice, just truth, clean and sharp, cutting through lies. I wasn't crazy. I had been targeted. And now, the world knew it. The real reckoning had begun. The backlash spread faster than I imagined. Neighbors who once smiled politely now crossed the street to avoid his house. Others knocked on my door, awkward but kind, bringing food or quiet apologies. I listened more than I spoke. My phone buzzed with messages from women I barely knew, saying they recognized his words, his tone. They thanked me for letting the truth out, even though I hadn't planned it that way. He stayed inside, curtains drawn. I heard shouting once, then silence. The man who controlled every room now hid from the world. I took my first walk alone in months, slow and steady. The air felt different, lighter. When I passed the park, I sat on a bench and watched children play. I realized how long it had been since I felt normal joy. Not excitement, not relief, just calm. That calm was my victory, and it was only growing. Court moved quickly after the recording spread. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer presented the evidence. The recordings, the therapist's notes, the financial records. His lawyer barely spoke. When my husband tried to interrupt, the judge stopped him. Firmly, clearly. I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in a courtroom. The ruling came that afternoon. Full restraining order. Temporary control of assets granted to me. Formal recognition of psychological abuse entered into record. The words sounded unreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. But they were mine. I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight, his mother beside me. She squeezed my hand and smiled through tears. He didn't look at me as they led him away from the room. He stared at the floor, small and shaken. For years, he told me I was nothing without him. That day proved the opposite. The story didn't stay private. A local paper picked it up first, then others followed. The headline was simple and sharp. Wife proves gaslighting with recordings. Husband loses everything. I didn't give interviews at first. I needed quiet. But I read the words slowly, feeling each one settle into place. He had worked so hard to destroy my reputation. In the end, he ruined his own. People stopped me at the grocery store, thanking me for speaking up even when I hadn't meant to speak at all. My therapist said this was part of healing, being seen without being questioned. At night, I sat in my favorite chair and reread old journals, noticing how my voice returned page by page. The fog lifted. The world felt solid again. Truth had done what fear never could. It set me free. His mother agreed to speak publicly. She said it was time. In a calm interview, she told the truth about her marriage, about the patterns she recognized in her son, about her regret for staying silent too long. My son told everyone his wife was crazy, she said. He was terrified she'd tell the truth. Her voice didn't shake. Mine did when I watched it. The community responded with support for her, for me, for anyone who had lived quietly under someone else's control. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The story no longer belonged to him. It belonged to every person who had been told they were imagining their pain. I sent his mother flowers with a note that said thank you for believing me. She called and cried softly. You saved us both, she said. I knew then this wasn't just revenge. It was release. The divorce settlement came quietly, without drama. He signed everything. No arguments. No speeches. The court awarded me full property rights and damages for defamation. The house was mine. The accounts were mine. The life I had built before him was finally returned to me. I packed his things carefully and donated most of them. I didn't want reminders. When the door closed behind the last box, the house felt clean. Not empty. Clean. I opened windows and let fresh air move through every room. That night, I slept without fear of footsteps or whispers. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt steady. Strong in a quiet way. He left with nothing but his shame. I stayed with my truth, my home, and my future. Justice didn't roar. It settled. And it stayed. I cleansed the house room by room. I didn't rush. I touched every surface, deciding what stayed and what went. His chair went first. Then his books, his framed photos, his carefully chosen decorations meant to impress others. I repainted the bedroom a soft light color he once mocked. I moved the bed to face the window so morning light reached me first. Each change felt like breathing deeper. Friends came to help, laughing gently, not loudly, respecting the quiet healing. We opened closets and found more of his control hidden in small ways. Notes. Rules. Old comments scribbled on paper. I threw them out without reading. I didn't need reminders. When the last bag left the house, I stood in the doorway and felt something close to peace. This home no longer held fear. It held me, and that was enough. With the house calm again, I felt restless in a new way. I didn't want to sit still. I wanted to build something honest. With my therapist's support, I started planning a small nonprofit. I called it Clarity. Its goal was simple: help people recognize gaslighting before it swallowed them. I worked slowly, learning paperwork and rules, asking questions when I didn't know answers. My age didn't scare me anymore. Experience was power now. I spoke with counselors, lawyers, and volunteers. Many had stories like mine. Some cried when they spoke. Others smiled with relief. Clarity grew quietly, like a steady flame. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was creating safety. Every email I sent, every meeting I held, felt like proof that what I survived could matter. Pain, when shaped carefully, can become something that saves others. My first public speech terrified me. The room was full, lights warm but bright. My hands shook as I stepped forward. I took a breath and told the truth in simple words. I spoke about doubt, about being told my mind couldn't be trusted, about silence being mistaken for weakness. My voice trembled at first, then steadied. They call me crazy, I said. I call myself awake. The room went quiet, then applause rolled like a wave. People stood. Some cried openly. I didn't rush off stage. I stayed and looked at them, at the faces of people who finally felt seen. That moment changed something deep inside me. My story no longer belonged to fear. It belonged to hope. And hope is loud in the best way. His mother sat in the front row that day. When I finished, she wiped her eyes and smiled through tears. Afterward, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "You gave me the courage I never had." That stayed with me. We talked often now, sharing tea and quiet conversations. She was lighter, freer. Guilt still visited her sometimes, but she faced it honestly. I reminded her that cycles only break when someone speaks. She had spoken. We both had. Watching her heal felt like watching a door open that had been locked for decades. I realized my revenge wasn't just about him losing power. It was about women finding their voices again. Across generations. Across fear. That understanding filled me with pride I had never known before. He emailed me once. Short. Careful. "I never wanted you to leave," he wrote. I read it without shaking. Without anger. I replied once, and only once. "You never wanted me to see." Then I blocked him. There was nothing left to say. My life was full now. Full of honest work, steady sleep, real laughter. I walked through my home and felt grounded. I wasn't proving anything anymore. I wasn't defending myself. I was living. The woman he tried to erase was standing taller than ever. And she wasn't looking back. My work kept growing in ways I never planned. A publisher reached out after my speech went viral online. They asked if I would write my story. I said yes, but only if I could write it plainly, without drama or exaggeration. I wanted truth, not spectacle. The book became Through the Fog. I wrote early each morning, coffee warm in my hands, sunlight on the page. Writing helped me understand how strong I had always been, even when I felt weak. Invitations followed. Libraries, community centers, conferences. I spoke slowly, clearly, the way I wish someone had spoken to me years ago. People lined up afterward, some shaking, some smiling, all grateful. I wasn't famous. I was useful. That felt better. Healing became my work, my purpose. And every time someone told me my story, helped them leave, I felt the last pieces of his control fall away for good. Letters started arriving from strangers. Women, men, older, younger. They wrote about living in confusion, about doubting themselves, about hearing their partner's voice in their head even when alone. I answered as many as I could. I didn't give advice. I gave belief. I told them they weren't broken, that words could wound, that clarity was possible. My days felt full, not busy. There was a difference. I laughed more easily now. I slept deeply. Fear no longer followed me from room to room. Sometimes I caught myself smiling for no reason at all. That was when I knew I was free. Revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It was living well. It was turning pain into light. And it was watching others step into that light too. He had tried to make me disappear. Instead, my voice traveled farther than his ever had. I heard about him through others. People said he wandered the old neighborhood, talking to himself, arguing with shadows. Some whispered he had lost it. The words felt strange, familiar, ironic. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't feel sorry either. I felt finished. What happened to him was no longer my responsibility. The man who told everyone I was crazy now carried that label himself, not from lies, but from consequence. I focused on my garden that afternoon, hands in soil, breathing deeply. Growth took time, care, honesty, everything he had avoided. As I stood there, I understood something simple and powerful. I didn't need him to suffer to feel whole. I just needed distance and truth. And I had both. His mother visited him in care once a week. She told me about it gently, without drama. One day, she said he looked at her and whispered, "You turned her against me." She held his hand and answered softly, "No, you did." Then she came to my house for tea. We sat quietly, watching birds gather at the feeder. She thanked me again for breaking the silence she never could. I told her she had been brave when it mattered most. We didn't speak of him much. We didn't need to. Our bond wasn't built on anger anymore. It was built on truth, respect, and healing. Two women who refused to stay quiet forever. That felt like victory enough. The final moment came on a bright morning at a televised conference. I stood at the podium, lights warm on my face, audience silent and waiting. I spoke clearly, without fear. I talked about manipulation, about control dressed as care, about the danger of being told you can't trust your own mind. I ended simply. They said I was crazy. I said, I was not. I was being silenced. Today, I stand awake. Applause filled the room. I stepped back, steady, proud. My story no longer hurt to tell. It felt complete. As I left the stage, I knew this was the ultimate payback. Not his downfall. My freedom. If you love this revenge story and want more just like it, make sure you're subscribed. There are plenty more to tell.